is EI, educational and informative.
Today on Mystery Hunters. Imagine finding an ancient object. You pick it up. Suddenly, poof, you're transported 2,000 years into the past. What do you think happened?
John and I either went back 2,000 years in time, or the past came to us in some way.
Did something in this field cause a slip in time?
And are there real-life X-Men with the power to control electricity with their brains? Could you have the power too?
And Doubting Dave is going to show you how to harness another kind of superpower you probably don't even know you have.
You gotta stay.
Everybody can have electrical powers, not just sliders.
It's real-life sci-fi.
On Mystery Hunters.
We'll be right back with more mystery. We now return to Mystery Hunters.
Is it possible to slip forward or backward in time? A man in England says he went back almost 2,000 years into the past. Did he really travel backwards in time? Or did something from the past travel forward to him? The man said he traveled back to ancient Roman times while he stood in this field. It just happens to be a few miles from the ruins of a 2,000-year-old Roman town, Iconium. Could this field be a portal to the past? Colin and his friend were using their metal detectors to search for lost objects in this field one night. They got lucky and found some Roman coins that had been there for 2,000 years. Suddenly, they heard something that sounded like horses galloping towards them.
And the noise grew louder and louder and louder. So I said to John, you better run. And the sound of the hooves passed right between us.
Did you see any horses?
No, we didn't see the horses. But it was a very distinctive sound, a very rhythmic clomp, 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 clomp.
Colin and his friend John were really creeped out, but they stuck around anyway. And amazingly, in just a few minutes, they found 4 more ancient Roman objects. Had those objects fallen off of the horses that they'd heard? They were pretty freaked out, so they started to head back to the car. But now, there was something there in the field blocking their path. It was a big, long wooden fence.
It was clearly, definitely a barrier made of timber. Well, we were a bit taken aback by this because obviously there's nothing in that at all. As you can see today, there's nothing here like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we walked parallel to it for about 100 metres. We turned to look back. When we turned around, it wasn't there anymore. It had gone.
Was it an ancient Roman fort? In the morning, was there any evidence of what happened the night before?
We could see our own footprints all over the field. There was no signs of any disturbance from horses. There was no hoof prints anywhere at all.
They could also see from their own footprints where they had turned to avoid the fence. So, Colin, you heard horses galloping. You saw a wall in this field, a field you've been in several times. What do you think happened? Do you think it's possible that you traveled back in time right here in this field?
Who knows? In my opinion, we saw this field as it existed in some other time. John and I either went back 2,000 years in time, or the past came to us in some way.
Did Colin really travel back to a time when ancient Romans lived here? Could he have heard a Roman army riding to their fort? Is there something about this field that can take you back in time? I'm picking up some interesting signals.
I love these old shows. I used to pretend that I had superpowers. Okay, so it was just a trick. I don't really have superpowers. But it seems there are people out there who might. I read one report about a woman in Greece. She pulled a move right out of one of the X-Men movies, when a restaurant owner refused to turn down the music. Pretty freaky. But what's even freakier is that she's not the only one out there who says she has this strange power. Hundreds of people swear they can cause lights to go out and affect electronics without even touching them. They're called sliders. Can you tell me about your special power?
Lights go out, or street lights will be green when I want them to be.
Carl Penny's a slider. He started noticing that strange things were happening when he was about 17 years old.
Can you control it? I mean, we're standing near a street light right now. Do you think that you could turn it on or off on purpose?
The extent of my control would be on traffic lights. It's the only place I've developed it.
Carl says he can't exactly make lights change when he wants to.
What do you think causes it?
I'm just kind of sensitive to electricity, more so when I'm like emotional or angry. I am studying electronics engineering. Maybe my brain runs at a higher frequency that I have some effect over electric devices.
Could sliders have supercharged brains capable of controlling electric things around them? To find out, I'm gonna probe Carl's brain. Dr. Robert Chan studies the human brain. He can measure electrical activity.
The amount of electricity produced by the human brain is about 1 million times less than that produced by this battery.
But what if certain people could produce more electricity than normal?
Do you have someone in mind? Then we can test it.
Actually, I've brought somebody with me. He's just waiting outside. Would you test him now?
Sure, let's go.
This is an EEG machine. It's gonna show us the electrical activity in Carl's brain as he tries to turn off a light. What's the secret behind the slider's powers? Is Carl's brain a super generator of electrical interference? If he can pass my test, that might convince me.
Some people think they can affect machines with their minds. But how about actually becoming one? I got an email from a young boy who is worried about just that. Take a look on the Mystery Illustrator. Dear Doubting Dave, I saw a movie the other day where evil cyborgs from the future tried to take over the world. Could this actually happen? Well, my little prophet of doom, you're not going to believe this, but there are already cyborgs all around us. They look like us. They dress like us. They even act like us. But they're not evil. In fact, of course, some of them might get a little testy at times. You see, unlike a robot, which is all machine, a cyborg is part machine, part human. That means that anyone with a pacemaker or even a hearing aid is technically a cyborg. However, the cyborgs you're thinking of are humans with parts added that give them superhuman abilities. But could that kind of cyborg exist? Scientists are working on more ways to put technology on and in our bodies, like robot arms and legs to replace damaged ones, and even microchips for your brain, so you can hook up to the internet just by thinking about it. But most of these things don't work yet. And even if we do get them to work, humans will still be in control of their mechanical parts, not the other way around. So, my friend, I wouldn't be too worried about cyborgs from the future taking over the world, because cyborgs aren't evil. They're just people, like you and me and him.
We'll be right back with more Mystery Hunters. We now return to Mystery Hunters.
Could there be a doorway to the past right here? A man says he slipped 2,000 years back into the right. Holland 2,000 2,000-year-old Roman coins in this field. Right after he dug them up, he heard running horses and saw a fort that wasn't there before. I wonder if those objects caused the bend in time. Do you still have all of them?
Not all of them, though. The more historically important ones are at the museum in Shrewsbury.
I have to get my hands on those objects to find out if they caused a slip in time. Roger White is an archaeologist. If there's anything weird about those objects, he'll know it. So what did Colin find in that field?
He found a number of objects. There's this one, which is the tip of a spear. This is the bit you'd stick into the ground to make the spear stand upright. And the guy who owned it has actually put his name on it. Niger is Niger, it's a name.
2,000-year-old writing. That's spooky. And they also found something else that a Roman horseman would have had. This is a star turret. It was attached to a horse's saddle. The top of it used to be a ring that the reins went through.
If you think about it, you're riding on a horse. You've got a shield on your left arm. You've got a spear in your other hand. So you put the reins through the turret, and that keeps the horse under control and stops the reins getting tangled up in the horse's hooves.
These objects were all from horsemen, and Colin said he heard horses. He also said he saw a wall. Is there any record of a Roman fort in that area?
Absolutely.
When the Romans were invading Britain, they were temporary forts to camp out in at night. Guess what the walls around those forts looked like? A big wooden fence, just like Colin saw.
And stuck in the ground would be poles with objects like this underneath them, which would actually carry the standards of the Legion, the regimental flags, and these are very, very important to the Romans.
This is pretty freaky. Everything Colin said he saw that night would have been in the field 2,000 years ago. Did he really step back in time? Or did a Roman soldier named Niger and his men come into our time? I'm going to recreate Colin's experience at the ancient fort site to see if a time slip will happen again.
Let's turn it on for you.
Okay. Colin heard the horses right after he found the Roman artifacts. He said it was somewhere around here. Maybe if I find the exact same spot, something will happen to me too. There's something here. It's nothing. Well, if there is a portal to the past in this field, I'm not finding it. But does that prove that Colin or the Romans didn't travel in time? Is time travel possible?
Yes, it is. We're doing it now.
So, time travel really is possible.
Can people who call themselves sliders affect lights and electronics? Carl Penny says he can. But what's the source of his superpower? I've arranged for an expert on the brain's electrical activity to test Carl's power.
Would you concentrate and see if you can shut the light off?
Will his brain show a higher than normal level of electricity?
So what's the verdict? Does Carl's brain generate more electricity than average?
I don't see anything abnormal right now. But to be sure, I think we'll have to do a much longer recording.
So the test didn't prove anything. But how can hundreds of sliders be wrong? Well, the sliders went looking for answers too, and they found Hilary Evans. Hilary Evans is the only expert on sliders. He's been studying them for years. You're the one that came up with the name sliders. Why sliders?
SLI stands for Street Lamp Interference. But people have affected television sets, they've changed channels spontaneously, that type of thing. And then perhaps the most extraordinary one is a lady who, when she gets on board an aircraft, has to be very careful. Often the captain will come through on the intercom saying, "I'm sorry, folk, we've got a bit of a problem here. There seems to be some kind of interference." And she says to herself, "Oh no, I've done it again."
That sounds dangerous. So what do you think is the source of their power?
It's impossible to say what the source of it is. Obviously, it starts somewhere in the mind of the person who's doing it.
Streetlights, radios, airplanes? Could people really affect these things with their minds? I found an answer at Princeton University. So can people affect objects and machines with their minds?
It would appear they can. Come inside. Let me show you how it works, and you can see for yourself.
In this special lab, they're doing some weird experiments. This robot is programmed to move around the table on its own. But let's see if I can use my mind to make it come to me.
And the idea is for the operator to try the robot to come over to where he or she is sitting just by willing the robot to come over there.
Okay, I'll try to make it come to me.
All right. Great.
I did it. I was controlling with my mind.
You certainly were.
How does this work?
We don't really understand how these things work, but we do see it happening more often than it should by pure chance.
Does that mean that we could all be sliders? Check this out. Could I also have superpowers like Carl?
We'll be right back with more Mystery Hunters. We now return to Mystery Hunters.
Two men say they found ancient Roman objects in this field, then were almost run over by galloping horses and saw what looked like a Roman fort. Did they time slip back into the Roman era? Neil Johnson is a physicist. He's an expert on time. Is time travel possible?
Yes, it is. We're doing it now. We're moving forward through time. Moving forward in time is relatively easy.
Neil tells me that time actually moves slower the faster we travel. We have to be traveling at a super fast speed to notice a difference.
Let's do an experiment. Imagine we're exactly the same age, and you're going to go off in a spaceship to some far distant planet. If you're moving almost at the speed of light, I would have aged more than you when you get back. Light is the fastest thing in the universe.
So my spaceship would have to be really fast to be able to travel through time. And no one has built a spaceship yet that can travel at the speed of light. How do you explain Colin's experience in the field after he found those ancient Roman objects?
It's quite possible that what he was actually seeing was information that somehow had moved in time.
So, while scientists think it should be possible for things to slip through time, so far, it's only a theory. So time travel really is possible. We just don't have the technology to use it yet. But what about what happened to Colin that night? Was his imagination running wild after he uncovered some ancient objects? Or was it really a bend in time?
People called sliders say they can influence light and other electronic things with their minds. It seemed like I made a toy robot come to me. And many sliders say they can turn streetlights on and off when they walk near them. Could we all learn to harness the power and become sliders? Maybe. But I called in the electric company, and I may have solved the mystery of the streetlights. Joe Rippert is a street lighting supervisor. Joe told me why it looked like I was turning out that light with my mind. He says it's because the bulbs are old.
So when the streetlights get old, the bulbs, they go off and on more quickly. Sometimes you can almost set your watch by them. They go off and on so regular.
That's what happened to me when I was staring at the streetlight.
It probably did.
And Joe shows me another reason why streetlights can turn on and off by themselves.
This is a photocell, and when the sun shines on it, it keeps the light off, and when it gets dark at night, it turns the light on. But the problem is, if a car's headlight would shine on that photocell, it would actually turn the light off.
So, Joe, when people think that they're affecting the lights, it might just be that the lights are going off on their own.
Pretty much.
So the streetlights can be explained. But what about sliders who say they can affect radios, watches, and airplane electronics? Maybe Doubting Dave can help me figure that one out. Doubting Dave.
Hey, Araya.
Hey, you've got a stain.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Don't be. That's why I put that carpet there in the first place.
You wanted me to shock you?
No. I wanted to show you that everybody can have electrical powers. Not just sliders. Here's a way you can test your own electrical powers. First, you have to be wearing a sweater. You also need a balloon and a fluorescent light bulb. And be careful with the bulb because they're very fragile. Blow up the balloon and tie it off. Then, bring the balloon and your bulb into a dark room. Rub the balloon on your sweater at least 10 times. This builds up static electricity just like rubbing your feet on a carpet. Hold the bulb at one end with the other end resting on something metal on the floor. And move the balloon slowly up and down the length of the bulb. The static electricity on the balloon charges the gas in your light bulb just enough to make it glow.
That's pretty cool. But could sliders be using static electricity to affect things like radios, watches, and airplane equipment?
Well, static electricity can be electronic things that you actually touch, like your watch and your computer, especially if you've been walking around on carpets all day.
But could somebody generate enough static electricity to affect something without touching it?
Definitely not. Even if people could generate enough electricity to do something like that, there's just no way to shoot it over any distance. Ready?
You bet. Here's a little static power of my own.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let's see a slider do that.
Well, it looks like faulty lights or static electricity can explain most of those superpowers.
And remember, the effect that people seem to have on machines in the lab is so tiny, it's hard to say if they really have any powers. I'd want a much more noticeable effect before I believe it. Come to Papa. Come to Papa. Come to Papa. See? Nothing. Thanks for watching.
This is MeTV, Providence, New Bedford's home for memorable entertainment television.